Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sultans of Swap. And I say it's slow because I have a hard time with it. So we're just going with SOS on the Twitter. Good to have you in this morning. I'm joined, as always, by Edwin. And welcome back to Johnny Hollywood, John Anthony. Good to have you back, man.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, no problem. Before we get into it too far, I wanted to start out by saying, I'm going to read this because I don't want to choke up through it. I feel I owe you all a personal apology for my insensitive comment during the last episode. I know this last week has been very difficult for some of you. I was clearly out of order in making reference to flat-brimmed hat wearers not being good with trading. And I'm sorry you had to suffer with my foolishness. I hope you will be able to forgive me. I have tremendous respect for you and your abilities as card collectors, and I hope we continue to work well together. I'm terribly sorry. And I hope you guys understand I don't want to take any more time with it because I feel so bad about it. Rich Garrett, he's a good dude, and he was kind of upset, not really at all, but I appreciated him giving me some crap about it. Those are good traders too. So, Edwin, how are we looking on the Twitter, man, and Facebook?
Man, we're growing. We're growing. I looked at it earlier. We're 400 plus and steady moving. We really appreciate all of our Twitter fans. Reach out to us. Let us know what you want to see in the next shows. Let us know if any questions you have. Facebook is going crazy. We got people reaching out to us on Google Plus. Tag your friends. Let them know about the show, and reach out to us. Let us know what you want to see.
I'm really excited for this week, and I'm always really excited to do this. But I'm mostly happy to have John back. What's up, man?
What's going on, Bri? Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I missed you guys last week. I really enjoy this.
Now, I've checked in on a couple breaks you had this week. It was, what's the football? It's not immaculate. What's
Playbook.
The one called? Playbook, man.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I cheated on you by watching some other breakers, and they did not get anything close to what you had going, man.
I couldn't believe it. I thought the first break was incredible, and I think the second one might be even better because the first one we got the booklet, six-way quarterback numbered 1 of 5, which you will be able to find on my eBay tonight, sports_card_investors. And in the second break, we got another six-way booklet numbered to 10, and that was of the running backs, including Gurley. And we also got a Mariota booklet numbered to, I think, 49, which was unbelievable. So,
how are those selling?
Our two booklets will be the two first ones listed on eBay, so I really don't know. It's tough to say. My guess would be I think that six-way quarterback booklet will be 500 plus.
Wow.
Yeah. I also pulled an Andrew Luck autograph. So how did I forget that in the first break?
I think Andrew Luck was the first hit.
Yeah.
That came out of there. But yeah, we've talked about this in the previous episodes. I don't collect a lot of football, but even I had like a mild temptation to say, man, if they're coming out like this, why not? But like I said, some of the other ones I've seen, they've been cool cards, but they have not been those type of names, man. But good to have you back. Wanted to get into, I know we wanted to talk about grading today, probably more than anything else, on a couple of the Facebook pages that we're on together. There has been a bit of back and forth about grading being a scam, whether it's legitimate, what it does. Some of you guys that are listening in might not be too familiar grading, but one thing there's no doubt about is grading is a huge part of our hobby now. There's no way around that. When I was a kid, and I'm sure you guys were the same way, there wasn't any grading service that I'm aware of. There was certainly authenticating. Not to my recollection did they have, the 8, 9.5 grades. And I do remember Don West selling gem mint 10s in the early 90s.
Right.
I don't even remember what service they were from. So let me go to Edwin first, because Edwin, I know you have a huge PSA collection, and I'll just ask you, why is it that you prefer PSA as opposed to the other grading services that are out there?
I have collected. I'm a Ripken super collector, so that's first and foremost. I have, even in my display case behind me, you may see a Beckett card in there. You may see a KSA card somewhere. I have a little bit of everything, but the majority of my collection is PSA. I'm one of those folks that like to chase the registry, and try to collect every card out there. I have a lot of Ripken, obviously, and a lot of it is raw and it's not graded. Um, you know, for me, it's about preserving the card as well. So I have a lot of cards that are in penny sleeves and top loaders, but I also like the way that the cards are encased, preserved. Nothing's going to happen to them, and I can pretty much store them pretty regularly. I also like the fact is that I have a collection. Maybe I'm not going to be around forever, obviously, like most folks. And if my family ever decides to sell it one day, I think it'll probably give them a little bit more mobility to sell them, in a graded condition. Especially being a layperson, they may not really understand, what's the difference between, a 9 and a 10, looking at the card in a raw state, and they can, they can flip it a little bit easier, if that ever comes to the surface. But for me, like I said, it's mostly about protecting the card, encasing it. I also like kind of having a good understanding of what I'm going to get in the ballpark. But the people that grade these cards, they're humans just like us. They make mistakes. I've seen my fair share of mistakes. I got I got PSA 10s or BGS 9.5s. You put them right next to each other, and even two of the same grader, the same card, and they're different, and you can tell that, this one has a surface flaw or this one has this, so I think we hear it a lot online, especially, buy the card, not the grade. But, I think for the most part, the grading, process became really popular because, especially as online, purchasing and buying and selling and trading, grew over time as well with the eBay and all the other sites out there, that it gave people an extra peace of mind, not just from the authentication standpoint, but, also from, trying to have a, good general understanding of what are they going to get when they make a purchase like that.
Right. I did want to just kind of step back for a second, because we can go all over the place with grading, and let people know that we're primarily talking about Beckett Grading Services, BGS, not BCCG, and we probably will get to why that's the case a little bit later. We're talking about PSA, JSA, and we're also talking about SGC. And I'm going to toss it out over to John, because I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about grading, what our preferences are and what they're not. I also know that you have some very specific preferences when it comes to your grading. But I'll first ask you, as a seller and someone who's been in the business a long time, just generally, what are your overall thoughts on grading and its impact as a seller?
Well, my opinion of grading has changed. I would say pretty dramatically since, say, about 2007. As a seller, it makes things much easier. Like Edwin said, you buy the card, not the grade, but at least people can see exactly what the card should be. So every card in a particular grade, and I'm speaking about modern cards only because that's what my focus is, they have a value and they trade within a very tight range. It's different for vintage because you could have a 1953 Mickey Mantle and both in the same PSA grade, but one has much better focus or color than the other, and some people prefer the one with the better focus more so than just getting any old PSA 4. That's why I think you see so much of a variance in vintage grades. But I prefer BGS for modern cards, particularly because when you have that chance at a BGS 10, you get the additional pop. I used to send in anywhere between 100 and 500 cards every single month to BGS to be graded. And a lot of times I would send the same card over and over and over. And eventually it would come back a 9.5. And some great examples of that would be, for those that can remember 2010 Bowman Chrome, the cards were curved. They had surface issues. They had that like flaky stuff that was on top of the card to prevent them from scratching. They were incredibly condition sensitive. But I can tell you I used to send Miguel Sano in every single month. And it took me a long time, but some eventually came back 9.5. So my hesitation after seeing that with graded stuff as a collector is this card really the condition that they say it is, because from my experience, I can tell you, I have had cards grade a 9.5. I think what grading could do to really enhance the value for collectors and really give 9.5s that value that they truly once had. I wish there was a way, and I think PSA actually does this. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but on vintage cards, aren't they able to put some invisible marking on the card to know that it was a PSA graded card? I wish BGS would do that, particularly on rarer cards, so that once it gets sent in once, this is the grade. I mean, maybe if they reviewed it with a bunch of graders so that there's like an aggregate opinion, and this is what we think the grade should be. And it's done one time. I just don't think people should be able to send it in over and over and over to try to get that bump.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points there. First, I want to answer the question. I don't know if PSA does that. I have no idea. Edwin, you might know. Do you know?
Yeah, I think what he's referring to is the PSA's DNA, where they take that invisible marker and they swipe their items. Most of that is for their authenticated items. So your balls, your jerseys, those types of items, they'll generally tag, and that's more for authentication purposes to say, hey, this is really an item that I authenticated, because a lot of those items have stickers on them. I mean, those things can be moved around and whatnot.
Yeah, again, I don't know for sure. I would have a hard time imagining they would take a 1952 Mickey Mantle and put anything on it, just personally. But that does make sense for the items that wouldn't be as sensitive to cardboard. The other point, John, that you brought up that I'm really happy that you did, because it was a huge topic of conversation, was the resubmitting of cards until you get the grades you want. I think if you're a pretty hardcore collector, you may already know the speculation, but the speculation is that pretty much guys that sub, hundreds and thousands of cards every month and give BGS a lot of money come back with higher grades. The one thing about grading is it's obviously very subjective. I know in talking to some folks from BGS about the process, they use a lot of computer tools when it comes to centering and edges, things like that, scanning the surface of the card, so it's not as subjective as a process. I don't know how much we can really do here to quell any of those rumors. The story that the gentleman told was that he took a card that graded 9.5, 9.5, 9.9 and came back with a total grade of a 9, went to a card show, showed it to one of the authenticators, or one of the graders from BGS. The guy from BGS took it over to the table, gave him his card, said, hey man, resubmit this, and we all agree it's going to come back a 9.5. Seemed like a really nice story in the way the guy told it, but that lends credence to what you just said, John, which is that, hey man, that's a pretty subjective way to go about grading. So for myself, I mainly rely on PSA for older grades on cards. If you have seen me on Facebook around the pages, and I talk about grading quite a bit, there are examples of cards that come back a PSA 4. They have really nice centering, good color, they look nice, and I have the same card that's a PSA 5. It's a little sharper in its image quality, but it's way off center, and my preference would be for the 4. So I think Edwin's advice of just going for what you like in a card is pretty substantial. The real problem that you run into, I think, with some of these grades, and it's like a lot of things in the hobby, is money. And Edwin can speak to this, and John too. If something comes back a PSA 7, and you look at a population report, it's fairly common. So that item will go for, say, $100. And then an item that's a PSA 8, particularly for vintage, will have a huge jump in price. I know I just gave 7 and 8 as an example, but as I'm talking, I think Ricky Henderson's rookie card is a good example. If you have a PSA 8 Ricky Henderson, you're probably looking at about $50 to $60. If you have that card in a PSA 9, it's about $400. And if you have it in a PSA 10, it's $30,000. So that's why people put so much pressure on these grades. John, I was talking to you before, and you said that you really liked SGC, and that you had gone to SGC for a lot of grades, and I was curious why that was.
I went to SGC. I had bought a pre-war collection, and I use SGC for my pre-war stuff, and now I use them to do my authenticating. I used to use JSA all the time, but a fellow named Larry Studebaker used to be at JSA, and now he's gone over to SGC. I have a really good personal relationship with Larry, and that's who's always done. There you go. That's who's always done my authenticating anyway. So I just choose to deal with Larry because I really like him. He's a great guy. He gives great advice. He helps me out all the time when I see something that's questionable. I'm in direct contact with him, and he can tell me his professional opinion if it's authentic or not. So that's why I use SGC for pre-war stuff and for my autograph authentication. But Brian, I want to touch on something that you brought up about the guy that went to the table. That is, I don't know who you're talking about, but that happens, I can tell you, all the time. And I'll give you a great example of one. I was at the White Plains show. I want to say it was 2000 and, okay, I want to say 2008. We were at the White Plains show. And I'm at the BGS table, and I'm picking up a whole bunch of stuff. And this guy walks up to the BGS booth with, you know, a whole bunch of graded stuff. It was all Peyton Manning, 98, Bowman Chrome, all 98 stuff, rookie stuff, big cards. And there were almost all 9s and 9.5s. Well, you have to think for a second that these cards have been around for 8 to 10 years already. At that point, they've already been around for 10 years. They've probably been submitted over and over. They've they've been graded for God knows how long. Well, he submitted them all for regrade. I can tell you, because I was there, I witnessed this. He got at least 3 of the 9.5s to bump to BGS 10s. Now, the price difference, particularly on cards like that, those 98 Bowmans that are super condition sensitive, it's astronomical. I mean, yeah. It's huge. So that does happen all the time, and it just, I'm talking from the business side of the table, but for collectors, if I'm someone that's just a hardcore collector like Edwin, stuff like that just makes me wonder, you know, what makes this card in better condition today than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
Subjectivity.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, I'm not a staunch defender of the grading companies in any way. The argument that I tend to make for them, to the most part, is that if they allow this type of, and I don't want to use the word fraud, but if they allow that type of less than ethical thing to take place, they're putting their business in a really bad spot, because it tends to leave people in a position where they don't put as much faith into getting those cards graded. So again, I'm not as I know, I'm sure it happens. I don't. Anywhere when that type of money is involved, especially in a business that is as unregulated as baseball cards, you're going to end up with a lot of problems.
Well, I'm with you, Brian, but this is the interesting part, okay? So you said that it would put them in a precarious situation for making, right, let's just say, questionable decisions, right? Well, that's funny because from my standpoint, if I do anything questionable, my business suffers. These companies do questionable things all the time, and I can tell you, because the head of the grading department at BGS is my point person. They're doing more business than they ever have. They're so busy. They're so busy. I had to take a 4-month hiatus from sending in my bulk orders just recently because he said we're just so backed up. We're not taking bulk orders anymore. So everyone knows that this stuff happens, yet their business is at a peak. So until people want to really put their foot down and say, you know what, we're not going to accept this anymore. We're not dealing with this. They're going to continue to do it. And at the end of the day, the vast majority of people, it's the almighty dollar, right? So, you know, people want the 10. Edwin wants to chase the registry. So the guy who ends up buying that Peyton Manning that got bumped to a 10, but it was a 9.5 for the last 8 years, he wants the 10 so it can be in his display case and say, look, I have one of the 6 Peyton Manning BGS 10 rookie autos. So yeah, it's a really slippery slope, but something needs to be done.
It's amazing, man. Hey, John, I know you have to go.
Yes.
And for the people that are listening, I know we ran through a lot of this pretty quickly. We probably left more questions than answers. we'll talk about it a little more. But I did want to say, John, thanks for taking the time out this morning, man. We'll do this again next week, and hopefully, and I think we will, I think we'll get into it a little bit more because I think this is something that really interests people. So really appreciate it, man. Have a good day with the family, and thanks for stopping in.
You guys too. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
See you, John. All right, so John is out, and man, I think Edwin, like I said just 2 seconds ago, I think we left a little more questions than answers with that one, for sure. So that's something we'll have to delve into next week, no doubt.
Yeah, and I know a lot of folks out there are either just getting into collecting graded cards, or they're still they're on the fence. Maybe they don't know a lot about it. Hit us up, give us your questions. We'll try to get what we can online for you.
All right, man. Let's see if we can get my buddy Eric off of mute. You there, buddy?
I'm here.
All right, man. I'm so happy to bring in Eric Messersmith. Eric has been a good friend of mine since I was a kid. He currently works for ESPN in St. Louis. I'll let him give a little bit more of the bio. But the reason I'm excited to have Eric in is this week I was talking to you about your awesome baseball card collection from 1989, man, and all this involved. So I'm hoping we can get into a little bit of that. But first, tell the people about yourself, where they can find you, and what you're up to.
Well, I'm on Twitter at Eric101ESPN. I got a little bit of a cold issue going on here, so sorry about that. I worked at ESPN Radio in San Antonio, hosted a show there, covered the Spurs when they went to the finals against the Heat a few years ago, and then I moved up to St. Louis, where I am now, and I'm a contributor to the Bernie Michaelis Show, which airs 7 to 10 a.m. here in St. Louis, Monday through Friday, and I do a show on Saturday from 10 to noon.
Ah, very cool, man.
And it's 101sports.com is the website.
So there's a lot of disappointed people in St. Louis, obviously, since their beloved Cardinals didn't make it too far in the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely. It's you either win it all or it's a disappointing season here.
So now that baseball season is over, I assume everyone just moves on to the Rams and the Blues.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a baseball town, in large part because the Cardinals have been to the playoffs. I think it's 12 times in the last 16 years, in 5 straight years. But the Rams are big right now, and on the field they're playing well, and also there's the possibility they might move to L.A., so this could be the last season of the Rams here in St. Louis.
I was just going to say, I don't know how much scoop you have, from your contacts there, but does it look like they're moving or what?
I'd say it's pretty close to 50-50. I mean, if you put a gun to my head and said I had to make a prediction, I'd say they probably move, but it's definitely not a foregone conclusion. I mean, basically, for people who haven't been following this closely, there's 3 teams. There's the Rams, the Chargers, and the Raiders. And at least one of them is probably going to be playing in L.A. next year, and maybe 2. Out of the 3 cities, St. Louis is way far ahead of the other 2 in terms of building a stadium. San Diego's about a year behind St. Louis. Oakland has done basically nothing. So St. Louis in that regard is ahead. The problem St. Louis has is their owner, Stan Kroenke, really, really wants to go to L.A. He has the land. He has the stadium deal. He's going to pay for it himself. And so if it just comes down to money, the Rams will probably leave.
Yeah, and he's not from there, right?
He's from mid-Missouri, near a town called... He's actually from a town south of Columbia, which is about 2 hours west of St. Louis,
right.
And he's named after Stan Musial.
And so he's going to take a team out of St. Louis. So he loves money more than Missouri, is what you're saying.
Exactly. I mean, this is a guy who grew up as a Cardinal fan, listening to Cardinal radio broadcasts in rural Missouri. He grows up, becomes a multi-million. He's the richest owner in the NFL, and he's married to one of the Walton girls from Walmart, one of the Walmart heiresses. So their combined net worth is roughly $1 gazillion. And with him, it's all about money, and it's really sad because, look, in a business, in most businesses, that's a wonderful thing. But in professional sports, yes, it's about money. But could you imagine the Rooneys taking the Steelers out of Pittsburgh because they wanted to cash in L.A.? I mean, can you imagine that happening? So it's about more than money in sports. But for Kroenke, it's all about money. He wants to go to LA to cash in, and it's just a question of will the other owners stop him from doing it or not.
I wonder, that's an interesting question because, St. Louis obviously had the Cardinals that moved to Phoenix and then became Arizona. I think the Cardinals have moved a lot. There's a few maps that I've looked at online about all the team moves. And what you told me there, I didn't really know, man. I appreciate that. Now that you say that, I really want the Rams to stay in St. Louis, not just because, St. Louis has already taken a beating with their football teams, but just because, oh, my God, man. Like, really? How much? I don't know. I guess I get it. If I was a businessman, I might consider it too. But being named after Stan Musial, being married to a Walton, already being extremely wealthy, having a great fan base in St. Louis, what's their stadium like? Is it all right or what?
It's not good. The Edward Jones Dome, at the time that it was built, it was a pretty nice stadium, but that was in the mid-'90s. But here's the key thing. The stadium here is not as bad as San Diego and Oakland. Those are
right.
two worst stadiums in the league. And there are efforts here that are pretty far down the road to build a new stadium on the North Riverfront by the Arch in downtown St. Louis. It would be $1 billion project. And the governor, the mayor, the task force that's in charge of it have pushed the ball pretty far down the field. And they're a few steps away from getting final approval to get the stadium financed. And if the Rams move, Brian, it would be the first time that a team has ever moved from a city and left public money on the table. You're talking about $400 million in public money that the Rams could leave on the table. It would be a huge precedent. Teams just don't leave when cities are ponying up to give them money to build a stadium.
That's really amazing stuff, man, and I really mean that. But I do have to point out that your voice is absolutely horrendous.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No,
Can you still understand what I'm saying?
No, yes, I can still understand what you're saying, and it's very interesting and captivating to me on so many levels. You have no idea, but just knowing you for so long and hearing you talk, man, you should go to a doctor, or you might even want to consider, an ER visit today. I'm not if they can get you.
I've been sick for a few days, but my voice was fine yesterday, and then I wake up today with this.
Of course it was, man. I really, really appreciate it. So I mentioned before your outstanding junk era collection, and I want to go back to Edwin and ask Edwin. Edwin, do you still have your card collection from when you were a kid?
Yeah. I kept everything. I think that's part of being a collector. I mean, I don't know. It's more of a nostalgia item. That's back in the era when the in-person trading, and the local card shop, was the spot. So, I think for me, I don't know. I mean, I've told you before, I don't sell a lot. I buy a lot. I may trade a little. I may sell a little here and there, but I'm a card hoarder. When it comes to that, but I have that personal tie to that childhood collection, and it's a vast majority of it is Orioles. I traded a lot of what I had for Oriole stuff or purchased Oriole stuff, and to be honest with you, that's really where a lot of my Cal Ripken stuff started as well. Was the bulk of it right there, which is great. I mean, I can't get rid of it.
I still have my collection as well. Very similar. Did a lot of in-person trading when I was a kid, and I will protect the names. But I love going through that book. It's one book in that typical binder that has the 52 Mantle picture on it that says baseball card album. I think every kid had that. The cards are beat to crap. I can even remember some of the trades I've made. I remember I traded a 1971 Steve Garvey rookie card that looked like it got ran over by a truck for a handful of Jim Abbott's. And that is a true story. I absolutely made that trade. I thought Jim Abbott was a wonderful story, and I really wanted some of his rookie cards. So I was clearly not a great trader back then, but I did make that trade. Eric, I don't remember you and I ever swapping cards. I think we met when I was a little bit older. Where currently is your priceless and valuable card collection stashed?
Well, my collection, which is a decent size is in my mom's basement in central Pennsylvania. Or no, my mom's attic. And I was so disappointed when you told me my 89 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. rookie is not worth anything.
No, it's
I
worth
paid like $50 for that.
it's worth something. It's just it's not worth what you paid for it. So I'm curious, okay, so the 89 Griffey Upper Deck, what were some of the other very large and valuable Christmas gifts or items that you received that you know that you still possess?
When I was growing up, when you and I started collecting cards in, I'd say the late 80s to mid 90s, that 89 Upper Deck set was the gold standard. Remember? I mean, that thing was worth way more than any other collection. I feel like an idiot talking to you guys because you know so much more than I do about this. But from my time, that was it. So when I got that set, I was so excited. That 89 Upper Deck set, it was worth like $500, and now it's probably worth, what, 10 cents?
Slightly more than 10 cents because you got to pay shipping, but it's not going to be too much more than that. And I don't know, maybe I'm just admitting this because I have one of my really good friends on here with me, but there may or may not be a VHS cassette of a young child weeping uncontrollably when he received a 1987 Fleer Will Clark for Christmas. Occasionally when I go home, my mother will break that video out in front. She used to do it when I would bring young ladies in, just to torment me. But it's like any commercial you ever seen, man. I had a seizure, and I still have that card in its case, marked very clearly that it cost $35 to purchase. I think it would get about $1 now. But I do remember that really, really well. Man, those were the days of collecting. The advice that I give folks like you, though, is to still take that collection and take some time and look through, because there may be some cards in there that do hold value. The 89 Griffey Upper Deck is one example of a card that still does have some value. There are others. Edwin, any ones you had from when you were a kid that still held on and had a little bit of value?
I still remember my first Ripken rookie from from '82, the good old tops. There's a fair share of them. I was looking through them the other day, and I came across, speaking of Griffey, this Topps Finest refractor.
Yes.
So it was in the book. I pulled it out and actually, we didn't have one-touch cases back then, but I pulled it out, put it in a one-touch case. That thing is sharp corners. It went from the pack to the the sheet. But a lot of them do. I think one of the cool things about going back through the collections like that is not just the nostalgia aspect of it. Because there's obviously a lot of great memories associated with it, but there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of hidden treasure still in there. A lot of the error cards, the rare, cards that, over time collectors have really sought after. And, it brings up a great point. A lot of what drives our market is nostalgia. The people want to go back and get the cards that they could never get as a kid. For me, I always wanted that, that Topps, traded Ripken rookie card. I could never afford it as a kid, and now, once you get a little bit older and you have a little bit of, disposable income, so to speak, you can go and, purchase some of those. So I think that's, that's an awesome part of our market, and I think we see that churn, through the different years. You talk about the pre-war stuff, and then the vintage, the junk era, and I just love to see that kind of stuff transpire through our hobby.
I absolutely have done in my adulthood exactly what you just described. Most of the cards that are behind me or surrounding me in this room were cards that I could only dream about when I was a kid. I know that Roberto Clemente rookie is a great example of that. I remember so clearly one of my dad's friends had every Nolan Ryan. He had from his rookie card up until when Nolan Ryan was still purchasing. And when my friends and I would go over to the house, we would just sit there and stare at it like it was the coolest thing we had ever seen in our entire life, man. It was just beyond edge. So when I got older and I got back into the hobby, I was like, you know what, to heck with it, man. I'm going to do the exact same thing with Roberto Clemente, and make sure that I have everyone, and it'll just, it's not so much the Clemente collection, because Clemente was my dad's favorite player, as it is, I mean, that's obviously a part of it, as it was just remembering being a kid and seeing that Nolan Ryan run and thinking, man, I can't wait till I get older and have a job and go through and do those things. The junk era is one of those things I notice on the pages is still very, very popular. And it really is nostalgia, man. It's for all the things that you just said. When I go to a card shop, baseball cards for a pack now, as everyone listening well knows, they're fairly expensive, man. A pack of Gypsy Queen is $6, $7, $8. If you have kids and you want to get them into cards, I don't think those cards were designed for children. So what I'll see is the dads that are our age or a little bit older. They'll go in with their kids and they'll buy their Ted Williams or Mickey Mantle that they really want for their collection. And you know what they buy their kids? 1988 Topps rack packs. And the kids go and they love them. And they learn a little bit about history and a little bit about baseball. The dad is happy because his kids are happy. They learn, and it costs them 50 cents. So I think for that reason, the junk era will always be relevant in the hobby to some extent because of those memories. Now, can Eric take his baseball card collection down to the pawn shop and expect to walk away with his kid's college education money? Not even close, man. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
That's what I was counting on, Brian.
It's funny that we're joking about that, but it is a little bit sad, man. A lot of people did. Now, that's the bad part about the junk era right there. Mm-hmm. Again, just talking about memories, I remember going home to central Pennsylvania, to Lakemont Park, and they were having a baseball card show. And Mark McGwire rookie cards. This is when Mark McGwire hit 70 home runs in a season, were $350, $400. So I know a lot of people, Eric, share the same disappointment that you do, man, when it comes to the value of collecting, for sure.
Yeah, my return on investment is not good.
Yeah. I think it's negative. Yeah, I think for sure this is in the negative. But like I said, man, you can always find some. One thing that I really like to do with junk era cards, and I've noticed a lot of people are doing this lately, and I think this is cool and kind of picking up steam, is they're getting their junk era cards autographed by the players that they were fans of when they were kids, like Will Clark or whoever, and they're sending them in to PSA, and then they're giving the PSA DNA autographs. And, you're basically taking a card that was worth, nothing, 5 cents, 10 cents, and now it's worth, and there's Edwin with his autographed, traded and his autographed Ripken rookie. But that's a great example, man. The Ripken rookie is obviously still valuable, the traded one especially. And when I say valuable, it does have a monetary value. But getting them autographed, sending them into the PSA, getting them slabbed, we're starting to see those cards go for 30, 50, 100, depending on the player and how often they autograph cards. I know I just sold a Greg Maddux PSA DNA that, it was pretty cool, man. And it was nice because it took a junk era card, kind of made it cool again, slabbed it, and it still wasn't going to be as expensive as getting like a Topps 5-star or a Topps Finest Greg Maddux autograph. So I've been seeing a lot of that going on with junk era cards, doing TTM autos or in-person autos.
Well, another thing I see a lot of, and we see it a lot in the Facebook groups and online in the forums and whatnot, is like, what do you do with all these cards? You got a lot of junk. What do you do? And there's a lot of great ideas that come up, and we have folks that will donate to different children's hospitals. Just put little packs of cards together and just try to inspire folks about getting into the hobby and learning a little bit about baseball. Just like any of us. You have folks that will take them, turn them into collages. Take all that junk era, cards, cut them up, and as much as I hate to say it, it's better than burning them. We have some folks that'll take them right out back and put them in the bonfire. But they come up with some really creative stuff, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, guys, I don't want to cut it short. Eric knows I got a 4-year-old little boy. I got to run and take him to basketball. He's probably going to be a 6'3" white kid, so he's got a little bit of a chance. So I got to get him started early. But first, I want to thank John for stopping by, talking about graded cards. I really appreciate that. John's going to be on regularly. That you guys all know. Edwin, really appreciate it, man, so much. Tell the people where they can find us again, please.
Yeah, all the social media sites, Sultans of Swap. Twitter, it seems to be really popular right now, pretty easy to access. Facebook, Google Plus, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can catch this stuff live. Vimeo, I mean, anywhere. Just Sultans of Swap, Google us, and you're going to find us.
I'm telling you, man, Justin Bieber, watch out. We're going to catch him one of these days. And I also want to say thanks to my good friend Eric, man. I really appreciate you coming on this morning. I was legitimately fascinated with that St. Louis stuff, man. That is really good stuff. That's more than I've got out of the news. So tell the people where they can find you if they want to hear more.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Eric101ESPN. And anyone who's watching this in the St. Louis area, tune in to 101 ESPN here in St. Louis. And I'm on the Bernie Miklasz Show, 7 to 10 a.m. weekdays. And then I'm on Saturday mornings from 10 to noon here in St. Louis. And I apologize again about the voice.
No, it's all right, man. I know you're headed straight to the emergency room to get that stuff. That's how you make your livelihood, man, is talking.
Yeah, I got to take care of this by tomorrow.
It's the one thing that has to work.
I know.
It's broken down. You gotta get that taken care of, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix this today.
I'm only busting his chops so much because he's been my friend again since we were kids, man. And I really appreciate you coming on. And check us out, guys, on the YouTube. I know it'll be up fairly shortly, and we look forward to doing this every week. Please remember to submit questions in. I'd like to do a week where we kind of just run through them rapid fire. I think that would be a lot of fun. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
See you, man.